Go. In North America, call toll-free 1-833-288-EWTN. That's 1-833-288-3986. Outside North America, call 1-205-271-2985. Or send an email to openline@EWTN.com.
A tremendous Monday to each and every one of you. Thanks so much for tuning in to EWTN's Open Line. The best thing to happen to Monday since Monday Night Football. Father John Trigilio is waiting in the wings. If you've got a question you'd like to ask, simply send us, pick up the phone and give us a call at 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. If you're outside the United States and Canada, that number is 1-205-271-2985. And we'll even put you straight to the front of the line at 1-205-271-2985. You can always send us an email. That email address is openline@EWTN.com. I'm Jack Williams. Michael McCall producing the program. Your call screener is Matt Gubensky, and Jeff Burson handling our social media efforts. So if you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook Live, you can type a question into the chat window, and it may find its way to us by the end of the hour. And our host, as he is every Monday, the aforementioned Father John Trigilio. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
It looks like a road game today for you.
I'm in the Garden State of New Jersey.
Ah, there you go. There you go. Well, it's always good to see you and Father Briganti out of jail. Gary writes in, he says, what does the Catholic Church teach about when a person's soul is infused into a body? I can't find anything in the Catechism of the Catholic Church about this.
Okay, well, we believe that the soul is created at the moment of conception, and so you might not see the term ensoulment as maybe previously described, but certainly the immortal soul is created at that moment that it becomes a human person. And so once the egg is fertilized, then that embryo has an immortal soul, and it's a human person, it's a human being from that moment on.
833-288-EWTN is our toll-free number. Pick up the phone and give us a call at 833-288-3986. Michelle D., I would like to ask about charity for the poor. I donate clothes, and I have given beggars in the street water and money. I am afraid I'm not doing enough, and the Lord will be disappointed in me. Please give me your thoughts on what I can do to help. Thank you.
Well, I think you're on the right track to begin with. Certainly, Jesus wants us to give generously to the poor. Obviously, if you have moral obligations because you have a family to support, you're taking care of somebody. You have to also take care of yourself. So you don't want to make yourself destitute because you've given everything away. Otherwise, join a religious community and then you can take the vow of poverty and they'll take care of you. But I think you're on the right track. A lot of Christians certainly believe and practice a wonderful biblical tradition of tithing, giving 10% to the poor. As Catholics, we're encouraged to give, try to at least to give 5% to our parish or diocese, and then 5% to our personal charities. But again, it's all based on what disposable income you have, and you just don't want to give pocket change. You want to plan ahead and say, just as you would put money away for your retirement, say, I want to plan now on a regular basis to give to the poor, whether that's to the soup kitchen, to Catholic charities in your diocese, maybe it's even to your own parish. A lot of parishes have what they call the St. Vincent de Paul Society that helps people in the parish who they may not even be parishioners. They just people who live in your territory of your parish who need food, who need help with their paying their utilities and that. So a lot of people don't realize that your parish can also be the source of doing these corporal works of mercy as well as at a diocesan level.
And a somewhat related question, Dan writes in the 36 years after my first Holy Communion, I've only heard the word tithe mentioned one time by a priest. No one has ever discussed the second collection situation. Do I tithe to the first and second collection, or do I just give a chosen amount?
Well, I was a pastor for 16 years, so I would tend to lean in that direction of tithe on both, um, because the second collection, to clarify for a lot of people, it can be for something very practical, like if you have a high electricity bill because of the air conditioning in the summertime, or high heat bill because in the wintertime. It could be for sending donations to the foreign missions, any number of things. But the first and most important is the first collection, because that's literally the parish lives on. People don't realize that the diocese does not pay for our existence. The collection on the weekly basis from the parishioners is what pays for the parish. It pays the priest's livelihood. It pays for all the bills, the water, the gas, everything else, anything that needs to be done, shoveling or snow removal, or anything very, very practical at that level. So yes, at least if you're going to tithe, I'd say 10% to your parish, and the first collection would be first and foremost. I would not exclude the second, but if if it's a matter of one or the other, definitely number one it should be first.
Kim is watching us on Facebook, and she said, "Do souls have to wait until Judgment Day to go to heaven?"
No. Certainly, when the Pope declares someone a canonized saint, that is infallible teaching. We believe that that person is at that moment now in heaven. That doesn't mean they're the only ones in heaven. Certainly, a lot of people who die and maybe went immediately to heaven because they lived such a holy and sanctified life, or some people who spent some time in purgatory and are now in heaven. You don't have to wait to the end of time unless someone is in need of much purgation, cleansing. But it's not that you're in a holding room. Now, prior to Jesus, his incarnation, and then his redemptive act of dying for us on Good Friday, prior to that, yes, nobody was in heaven except the angels and God. Once our Lord opened the gates, then from that moment on, people could, and we believe have gone either directly or indirectly via purgatory.
Tony writes in, does the Catholic Church have a position on why Jesus appeared in human history when he did?
Well, we believe it says in Scripture in the fullness of time. Why at that particular moment? Certainly, things were right in terms of the salvation history. It was very strategic, and when you look at it in hindsight, because the Christian Church, because the Roman Empire was such that once the faith began to spread, and even though it took 300 years of Roman persecution, once the empire, in a sense, became Christian, it had access then to what was then known as the pagan world. That doesn't mean that Jesus could not have come at any other time. God's hands were not locked up, so to speak, that he had to go at that era. But it seems very opportune. It was like the right moment, the right time, the right place. Certainly, it's in fulfillment of all the scriptural prophecies that we see in the Old Testament.
Kathy would like to know, I have a question. In case of an emergency situation in a church, is there a procedure for protecting the consecrated hosts? If it is the priest and God forbid he is not capable, what can a layperson do?
Well, I presume you're thinking of a worst case scenario. If somebody comes into church, and unfortunately this has happened in a few places, somebody comes in to purposely, intentionally disrupt the Holy Mass. And this happened, I know for a fact because my friend was there, a priest friend at St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City, when a very activist group got in there and they were protesting the church's stand on sexual morality, and they were promoting gay marriage and other things. They went to communion, and then they desecrated the Blessed Sacrament. Now, what they did then there was they put in their pockets and then desecrated outside the church itself. But if somebody comes in and does something like that, anyone is certainly encouraged to, within reason, try to protect the Blessed Sacrament. We don't want people endangering their own lives, obviously, if you're not a trained professional. But if it looks as if you could prevent or slow down such a thing, yes, by all means.
833-288-EWTN is our toll-free number. Grab one of these open phone lines at 833-288-3986. It's Open Line Monday with Father John Trigilio.
If you've never been to EWTN's free family celebration, this is your year. Your EWTN family is waiting for you where it all began in Birmingham, Alabama. Join us Saturday, August 26th as we celebrate Mother Angelica's love for the Eucharist and mark the centennial year of Mother's birth. For more information on this free event, visit EWTN.com/family celebration. We want to see you there.
You want to grow stronger in your faith? Practice your faith. Live your faith.
For years, Father Benedict Groeschel was a favorite EWTN host, often taking questions from viewers around the globe or in the studio. In Father Benedict Answers Your Questions, the co-founder of the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal answers over 100 of these questions in his refreshingly frank, conversational, and compassionate way.
All supernatural grace is a gift, but a gift must be received.
Let this beloved spiritual master and Catholic psychologist help you draw closer to our Lord. Father Benedict Answers Your Questions by Father Benedict Groeschel, the latest release from EWTN Publishing, now available at EWTNRC.com or call 1-800-854-6316.
This is Open Line on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. If you have a question, call 1-833-288-EWTN. That's 1-833-288-3986. Outside North America, call 1-205-271-2985. Or send us an email to openline@EWTN.com.
You know, have you ever wondered what you're supposed to do with all those holy cards that you collect over time? Got a great item for you at EWTN's Religious Catalog. It's a holy card collection book, and it comes with 5 laminated holy cards to get you started. This handy little book has a soft, dark blue faux leather cover. It's stamped with a gold cross in the center. It has 20 transparent protective plastic pages, and it'll hold up to 40 standard paper or laminated holy cards. The 5 laminated starter cards included are the Prayer to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, very timely, Prayer to the Blessed Virgin, St. John the Baptist, St. Paul the Apostle, and St. Peter. It's available now at EWTN's Religious Catalog. That's EWTNRC.com. Free standard shipping on online orders of $75 or more. Standard shipping in the continental U.S. only. Use the code FREE at checkout. 833-288-EWTN is our toll-free number, 833-288-3986. First up today is Julianne in Fort Worth, Texas, a first-time caller. Listening on the EWTN app. Julianne, you're on with Father Trigilio.
Hello, how are you?
Fine.
Okay, great. I have a question. I had an Anglican friend tell me that they did not believe in transubstantiation. They believed in, I think he said, consubstantiation, and kind of the implication that Catholics were wrong in holding the transubstantiation of the elements, the sacrificial elements into the Eucharist. Can you explain the difference between what the Anglican Church believes and what the Catholic Church believes, and perhaps even why they no longer have this? Well, I know they're no longer in communion with the Catholic Church, but perhaps historically why they changed that belief.
Okay. Just to do a little back history here, it was Martin Luther who established the Lutheran Church, who came up with the idea of consubstantiation, where the belief was that the bread and wine remain simultaneously with the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Christ. The Council of Trent solemnly condemned that. We believe in transubstantiation, that the substances of bread and wine change into the substances of the body and blood of Christ. Only the appearances of bread and wine remain. So it's not both. It's that there's been a change, at least a substantial change, not in appearances. Now, in the Anglican Church, they have a wide variety of theologies because you've got high church, low church, broad church. So I have heard some members of the Anglican community or the Episcopal Church believe in consubstantiation. Some believe in transubstantiation. The difficulty, though, is Pope Leo XIII declared Anglican orders null and void. There was a break in the line of apostolic succession. There's also change in intention and form. So the Anglican Church does not have valid orders. So whether they believe in consubstantiation or transubstantiation, the point is it doesn't happen. Their priests, their bishops are not validly ordained. But you will have that difference of perspective based on what particular perspective that Anglican community has. But from a Roman Catholic standpoint, we believe that it's a transubstantiation. It's the substance of bread and wine change into the substance of Jesus' body and blood. Only the appearances remain. It's not both of them simultaneously being there. That was Luther's idea, and that was poo-pooed certainly officially at the Council of Trent, and it's also in the Catechism.
Next up is Gage in Hartselle, Alabama, listening on Sirius XM Channel 130. Gage, you're on with Father John.
Hey, Father John, thank you for taking my call. Had a question. The Athanasian Creed tells us that the two natures of Christ are together without confusion, change, division, separation. Yet, in the Eucharist, the Roman Church teaches that Christ is present, body, blood, soul, and divinity. How is that not a denial of the human nature, that he can be in two places at once?
Okay. Well, that's a good question. Remember, although he has a fully human nature and a fully divine nature, it's not 50-50, it's 100%. That's the mystery. He's true God and true man. It's one divine person. And so that human nature is hypostatically united to his divine personhood. Therefore, all the attributes of divine personality are now part of his human nature, so that he obviously, when he rose from the dead, he was able to go through solid walls. He was able to appear and disappear. So all those special things that are particular with a glorified body, he's able to be in many places at the same time, because his human nature is now been glorified, and it's part of his divine person. Therefore, he is not limited in the same way he was when he was alive before Good Friday. He freely, we call it kenosis, he gave up those certain prerogatives which would have been his by right. Obviously, the ability to feel pain and suffering was something which he would not have had to have embraced, because he did not inherit original sin, but he chose to embrace that, and so he allowed himself to be restricted in that sense, and just equally because human nature is finite. There are some limitations to it, but because it's united to a divine person, all those things change after the resurrection.
Thanks, Gage. We appreciate the phone call. 833-288-EWTN is our toll-free number. A couple of open lines and plenty of time for your calls at 833-288-3986. David is in Tampa, Florida, listening on Sirius XM Channel 130. David, you're on with Father Trigilio.
Hello, Father. Thanks for taking my call. The question I have has if a priest decides that he no longer wants to be a priest and he stops performing duties as a priest, is he allowed to then receive communion or get married in the church or any of that stuff?
Okay, I didn't get the whole. There was a little break up there.
Essentially, if someone were to leave the priesthood, are they allowed to marry and receive communion in the church?
Okay, if they are officially dispensed from their vow of celibacy, they can be married in the church. They can receive Holy Communion. It's only when they leave on their own and are acting disobediently, they did not go through the proper channels, and they were not officially laicized. So it can be done. It has been done. But if some priest does it on his own, just says it walks away off the job, he cannot get validly married, and he should not be going to communion either. But he can do that if he goes through the proper process, and it's not a done deal. You know, it is a juridical decision that has to be made.
833-288-EWTN is our toll-free number. 833-288-3986. Matthew's watching on YouTube. He said, I'd like to become a deacon at the end of my working life. I need to convince my wife first, though. What things will we have to consider, and does she need to be Catholic?
One, she does not need to be Catholic, but you will need her assent. They do not want deacons to go against, because you got married first, and so your primary obligation is to your wife and to your family. Therefore, if there's going to be any conflict, the bishop, the diocese is going to say no to your ordination. But if your wife's not Catholic, she does not have to attend any classes per se. You would be the deacon. She is not. But they would like support. They would like the wife to say, yes, honey, you're going to have to spend some time in the parish, preparing your homilies, doing baptisms, marriages. You're not going to have the same schedule as a full-time priest, but as a deacon, you're going to have to spend some time, and we want the wife to be okay with that. So they do ask, is your wife amenable to this? And if the wife is not, most bishops are going to say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to put a wedge between you and your family, because the sacrament of matrimony, in your case, predates the sacrament of holy orders.
Chike is also watching us on YouTube and wants to know, what's the difference between the penitential rite in Mass and confession with regard to venial sin? Do I still need confession after the penitential rite?
Yes, the penitential rite is a liturgical structure. We're all admitting the fact that we're all sinners in the eyes of God. We're in need of forgiveness. Any of the sacraments or sacramentals remit venial sin. So using holy water or going to Mass, receiving Holy Communion would remit venial sin. But the sacrament of penance and reconciliation is the only way to remit mortal sin. And so we don't want people to think that they don't really need to go to confession. There's a special grace. Even if you're going to go and just confess venial sins, there's still that beautiful grace. So don't feel, well, I don't need to go. Yes, you don't have to go, but you're encouraged to go, even if it's only venial sin, because it's a special sacrament. So don't think that the penitential rite at Mass is enough, okay? It's there liturgically, but I would say avail yourself of the fullness of the grace of that sacrament.
Jesse Jr. wants to know, what happened to the old Mass? Why did they change to the Novus Ordo? And are we not losing graces with the change?
Okay. That's a big can of worms. Certainly, all the graces are available now with the Novus Ordo that are available with the extraordinary form, because it's the sacrifice of the Mass. There are many people who prefer the extraordinary form or the traditional Latin Mass, or however you want to call it, but it's still the Mass. And the Novus Ordo and the extraordinary form, although one's in the vernacular, one's in Latin, One's very traditional, one is a little bit more modern. It's still the bread and wine are changed into the body, blood, soul, divinity of Christ. A validly ordained priest is celebrating the sacrament. It satisfies your Sunday and Holy Day obligation, and there are the infinite graces available at that Mass and at every Mass, and that includes not just the extraordinary form and the Novus Ordo, but also any the divine liturgies in the Eastern Catholic tradition. Those are all the same. You get the fullness. Now, it's de gustibus non disputandum est, as St. Thomas Aquinas would say. There's no argument in taste. So which one you prefer, that's the one you should go to.
833-288 EWTN is our toll-free number, 833-288-3986. It's Open Line Monday with Father John Trigilio.
Hi friends, Janet Williams here. Join me every Wednesday on Women of Grace Live as I welcome New Age researcher and blogger for Women of Grace, Sue Brinkman. Sue and I will be talking about all the wacky things that could distract you from your faith. Psychics, yoga, Reiki, crystals, acupuncture, Ouija boards, tarot cards, and astral traveling are just a few of the stranger things we discuss. That's why we call it Wacky Wednesday. So join us every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Open Line Monday is on YouTube. Search YouTube to find EWTN YouTube channel. You'll never miss an episode of our show or any of your favorite EWTN radio shows.
This is a Messy Family Minute with Mike and Alicia Hernan. Every couple makes decisions differently. Sometimes the person with the stronger personality makes the decision, or the person who cares the most makes the decision, or the person who feels they have the right to make the decision makes the decision. There is a problem with this.
In all of these situations, one spouse can sit on the sidelines, wash their hands of the results, or feel free to second guess and criticize the other. These are not examples of life-giving decision-making.
Joint decision means just that, deciding jointly after discussion, prayer, or simple agreement. But the most important part is that you agree as a couple to share the responsibility for that decision, because mutual decision means mutual responsibility. When you both agree to bear the responsibility for the decision, both of you assume the risk.
That is the type of unity that Christ challenges married couples to strive for. To listen to our podcast on parenting as a team, visit us at messyfamilyminute.org.
We're invited to converse frankly with God about what's going on in our lives.
How easy is that for you?
Share your story tomorrow on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on most of these EWTN stations.
Now back to Open Line with Father Wade Menezes.
This is Open Line on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
Congratulations going out to another member of the EWTN radio family, KMMK 88.7 FM in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, celebrating their 5th year with EWTN Radio. Congratulations to Tony and Susan May and everybody at Plus Charities from your friends here at EWTN. 833-288-EWTN is our toll-free number. Plenty of time for your calls and a couple of open lines for you at 833-288-3986. We head next to the great state of Kansas. Michael is a first-time caller listening on Divine Mercy Radio. Michael, you're on with Father Trigilio. Michael, are you there?
Hi, so sorry. Yeah.
Oh, no problem. Go right ahead with your question.
My name's Michael. I'm a Roman Catholic. I teach Sunday school to 2nd and 3rd graders every year. And the question comes up often about dinosaurs and whether or not dinosaurs were on Noah's Ark, were Adam and Eve cavemen, cave people. And I never quite know how to answer the question. So any help you can give me would be great.
Yes.
Okay, we don't know. That's the best answer I can give. Certainly, dinosaurs did exist. I mean, there's evidence of their existence. Did they die after the flood? A lot of evidence would point in that direction, but that's not to say that there could not have been some dinosaurs on the ark. I don't know where they would fit, because dinosaurs are a little larger than our normal animals. The thing is that when we read especially in the Old Testament, in the book of Genesis, it's not written as a history book or as a science book, but at the same time, it is divinely inspired. It's part of divine revelation. So we don't want people to think that they're all just stories in there in a way, because most people today, when you talk about, oh, is that a story, they think it's totally fictional. That's not what the church believes. We believe that that's inspired text and that there is truth in that. It's the how you look at the text itself that like with the 7 days of creation, 7 days of creation was it 24-hour periods? Some theologians say absolutely not. Some say yes. There's leeway in there because you have a number of layers of interpretation on that. Now, in terms of Neanderthals and Fred Flintstone and all that stuff, I've read some very interesting scientific information, and this is not from the religious aspect, but purely scientific, that human beings, Homo sapiens, are a distinct group, maybe have some similarities to Neanderthals, but we did not come from them, that they were distinct, and they may have existed side by side at some point, but this idea that we all evolved from one set of one type of being, that we came from apes, and that's something that they're starting to now poke holes in. We certainly believe that the human race comes from one set of human beings. That's monogenism. Pope Pius XII made that very clear in Humani Generis, that there is one set of human beings, and science is backing us up now too, because mitochondrial DNA, that two atheist or at least agnostic scientists in England in the early 80s found out every human being is traced back to one woman through mitochondrial DNA, and now they're working on showing that all humanity is also from one male parent. So we are one family of mankind in terms of the human beings. Whether there were other things that were similar to, that's something that the jury's still out on, but there is no intrinsic animosity between faith and reason when it comes to this.
You're still waiting for somebody to find a fossilized Bronto burger wrapper at a dig, aren't you, Father?
Yes, at the Slate Quarry Factory.
That's right. That's exactly right. God bless you, Michael. Thanks so much for the question. 833-288-EWTN is our toll-free number, 833-288-3986. David is a first-time caller in the Republic of Texas, listening on Guadalupe Radio. David, thanks for holding. You're on with Father Trigilio.
Thank you so much, Father Trigilio, for taking the call. Yes, my name is David. I'm from Fort Worth, and my question pertains to my son and wonderful future daughter-in-law. My son approached me last weekend. They're getting married next summer, and they've chosen to have a wedding at an event center. Obviously, priests do not travel to provide the sacrament of marriage. So my son's question to me was that, how can I go about receiving the sacrament of marriage through the Catholic process and also have the outdoor venue there in the summer? So that's my question.
Okay, well, this is something that's a more local perspective, in that each individual bishop and diocese determines whether or not they will permit marriages, weddings to take place outside a sacred space. A lot of dioceses for the longest time said no, you had to get married in the church. Certainly what we call canonical form is necessary for validity, that a person be married by a priest or deacon according to the Catholic ritual. The place, however, canon law gives some wiggle room. Many dioceses now have expanded the permission so that the priest or deacon could perform the ceremony outside. When I was newly ordained, that was almost impossible. We would tell people, look, this is a sacred event. It's a sacrament. You wouldn't want your doctor to do your appendectomy on the picnic table. You want things in their proper place. But again, they have to find out from the diocese, because that's one possibility, is that they could get permission. Without the bishop's permission, if they get married by not by a priest or deacon, it wouldn't be valid. If a priest were to do this ceremony and his diocese doesn't allow it, it would be valid but illicit. So the first important question is to find out from the diocese of where the wedding's going to take place, if that bishop allows that special privilege or dispensation, I should say, of being married outside a sacred space. The thing is, I had a cousin that once wanted to get married at the beach. I found a Catholic church 1 block from the beach. I said we could do the ceremony right there, and then you can have the reception at the beach. You walk 1 block, but we could still have a nice, dignified. You don't have to wear the tuxedo and the white gown. You could. Certainly not going to wear your bathing suit at the church. But you can do a simple, elegant, dignified ceremony, and then they could go to the beach or the Rose Garden or wherever it is. So it amazes me that people are so married, pardon the pun, to get married outside. If that's not allowed, what's more important? That you're married in the eyes of God. That's the most important.
I appreciate your answer. Very good. Thank you, sir.
833-288-EWTN is our toll-free number. 833-288-3986. Next stop for us is San Antonio, Texas. Guadalupe is a first-time caller listening on Guadalupe Radio. Guadalupe, you're on with Father Trigilio.
Hi, Father.
Hi.
Father, I have a question regarding the ashes of a cremated body, a Catholic. Is that soul allowed into purgatory and or heaven? The ashes are being kept on the fireplace in an urn, not on sacred ground, where I believe it should be.
Yes. The soul is not going to be punished or penalized, even if, God forbid, it was the desire and the expressed wishes of the deceased that that's what would happen. In many cases, it's not. It's the relatives who are just either being lazy or overly sentimental and keeping the ashes on the fireplace there. But the soul is not going to be held in some kind of prison or a waiting room. They're not going to be punished for that. The church did make it clear in the past that we did not allow cremation. But again, if someone did, depending on what was their reason for that, their attitude, right now it's permitted, it's tolerated. But as you point out very appropriately, the ashes must be buried intact, either in the ground or at sea, but in a container. No scattering of the ashes. But if grandma or grandpa or uncle, Gus or Ethel is in, their ashes are still somewhere. Their soul isn't going to be stuck, but those ashes should be buried, because we believe in the resurrection of the dead, and that's the best way of affirming that, is to show respect even to the cremains.
833-288-EWTN is our toll-free number, 833-288-3986. Marilyn writes in, "Hello, Father Trigilio. Thank you for your vocation. My question is about the title given to St. Edward of the Confessor. Why is he called the Confessor? Also, in the litany of the Holy Name of Jesus, there is an intercession that reads, 'Jesus, light of confessors, have mercy on us.' Is this the same reference to a confessor as St. Edward?"
Well, St. Edward was not a priest, but he went to confession. And so in Old English, that was the way one was referred to, as someone who went to confession, the confessor, as opposed to how we describe it today. I'm the priest confessor, and then the person coming into confession is the penitent. But at the time of St. Edward, he was given that title, St. Edward the Confessor, because he availed himself frequently of going to confession. He himself did not hear confessions because he was not ordained a priest. Now, in terms of Jesus, and priest confessors, that's a distinction which is very important to make, that the priest acts in persona Christi. He acts in the person of Christ as an alter Christus, as another Christ, So when I'm hearing confessions, it's Jesus absolving through me and using me. Today we would be a little bit more circumspect on using that terminology.
Still time for your calls at 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. James is in Cleveland, Ohio, watching us on YouTube today. James, you are on. James, you're on with Father John Trigilio.
Hi there. I got a question, sir. My question is about the document Syllabus of Errors, Pius IX's document, and I was wondering if Vatican II did away with any of those statements, or did it update, or was it in continuity with?
Yeah, the syllabus was never overturned to begin with. It's just how these things are described. We're using different, say, terminology, but a heresy is a heresy, and certainly the things that were mentioned in the Syllabus of Errors, the heresies that are explicitly named in there, for instance, this indifferentism, Americanism. There's all these, things that were around at the time that Pope Pius rightfully said we need to condemn. It's not that Vatican II said, okay, they're all fine now. No, if something was heretical, it remains heretical, and something that's divinely revealed and has been solemnly taught as dogma or doctrine still is. We just don't use that sort of format anymore, a syllabus of errors. But we still have the oath of fidelity and the creed that is made. I, as a priest, had to make oath of fidelity, promising to uphold the teaching of the church and the magisterium, the profession of faith. In older times before the Vatican Council, it was similar, a little bit more detailed, the things that were repudiated, but it's the same thing. So it's not this creeping sort of heresy type of thing that people have accused in the past. What is true is still true, and what is wrong is still wrong.
Does that help, James?
Yeah, thank you.
Very welcome. We appreciate the phone call. 833-288-EWTN is our toll-free number. We head next to Dayton, Ohio. Mon is listening on Sacred Heart Radio. Mon, you're on with Father Trigilio.
Hello, Father.
Hello.
I listen to you all the time. My question is, what if I don't want to go to heaven, or I don't mind going to hell? I leave it up to God to decide. What would the Catholic Church, why would I need religion after that?
Okay, well, first of all, it is up to God where we end up. But God, because he respects our free will sort of ratify our decision. So if somebody really doesn't want to go to heaven, he's not going to force them to go. He never actually sends anyone to hell. He just affirms their decision to go to hell. But from a standpoint of just pure rationality and logic, it makes no sense for someone not to want to go to heaven, because heaven is perfect happiness for eternity. Hell is eternal punishment and pain, the pain of loss, and the pain of in the body, because once the body is raised up at the end of time with the resurrection of the dead, you're going to have the pain of sense as well as the pain of loss. So if somebody doesn't want heaven and prefers hell, it's a sign of something else going on psychologically. But at a moral level, if someone, that was Lucifer. He'd rather reign in hell than serve in heaven. That is the sort of the ultimate insult to God, but also it's the ultimate injury to oneself.
Be sure to join us for Take Two with Jerry and Debbie tomorrow at noon Eastern Time. The topic tomorrow, tell us of a time you fell into despair and how'd you rise above it. That's Take Two with Jerry and Debbie tomorrow, noon Eastern Time, right here on EWTN Radio. Guy is a first-time caller in Omaha, Nebraska, listening on Spirit Catholic Radio. Guy, you're on with Father John Trigilio.
Hi, Father. Hey, my father-in-law passed away, or not father-in-law, brother-in-law passed away and they had a memorial service for him up in Alaska, and he was, and as a gesture of kindness, my sister gave me a portion, and not really knowing what to do at the time, I didn't refuse him just out of kindness, so I brought him back to Nebraska with me. But the remains of the ashes were buried in Alaska. I have this dilemma.
So, Guy, we've got a little bit of a tough connection there, but I think the gist of it, Father, is that his sister's husband passed away, had a funeral in Alaska. The majority of his ashes were spread in Alaska, and he was given a small portion of them, and he's a little unsure of what he's supposed to do with that now.
Yeah, whatever he has in his possession should be buried intact, even though there was a portion, or even if it was the majority of it was scattered or whatever. Whatever he has should be buried. And my understanding is that if you go to your nearest Catholic cemetery, they will help you with that, because I don't believe anybody requires you to buy a whole plot. You could use an existing plot of someone who's there and just bury the cremains in there on top, because you don't have to necessarily dig that far down. You don't need the vault and all the other requirements as you would with a casket that has the body in there. But definitely you want to bury the cremains in holy ground, like I said. So yes, don't worry about what was done before. That wasn't your fault, and it's you can't put the genie back in the bottle, so to speak. But what you do have with you should be buried.
Rose is in Florence, Kentucky, listening on the EWTN app. Rose, you're on with Father John.
Hi, Father John. My question is, I'm a born Catholic, raised Catholic, devout Catholic. My sons were raised Catholic in Catholic schools, and he's 33, and he says he's agnostic and doesn't believe in God. If he was to die right now, would he go to where does his soul go?
Okay, we leave that to the mercy of God, but I would say this: the Church, in her infinite wisdom, tells us that we don't know what the state of a person's mind and will is. Only God knows. So even though someone may say they're agnostic or that they're an atheist, only God knows to what certitude they ascribe that to. For someone to be culpable that they would go to hell, it has to be something where they made a complete free will, intelligent decision to say, I reject Christ, I reject the Catholic faith, I reject God, and they're culpable. But in many cases, as Fulton J. Sheen would say, it's not that people are rejecting the Christ or the Church, it's what they think. It's a perception. It's some kind of anomaly that they're rejecting. So their ignorance, and we call it invincible ignorance if they can't improve it, then they're not totally culpable. It's only when a person has freely, deliberately, consciously made that choice. And so it's possible, but I would say there's still hope, because as long as he's still alive, keep praying for him. St. Monica prayed for 30 years for her husband and her son, St. Augustine. And I've seen things happen where people have come back. They went through a period of being agnostic or atheist or whatever, but the prayers of one of their parents or both their parents or whatever, or a spouse, a sibling, a grandparent, certainly pray for him. Have a priest offer some masses for him. Go to your local parish and say, I would like a special intention for my son. He doesn't have to know that you're having masses said for him, but pray a rosary every day for his soul as well. And you may not see the fruit of your efforts, but if it happens before he leaves this earth, it's still worth it.
We head back to the Republic of Texas. Gabby is in Houston, listening on Guadalupe Radio. Gabby, you're on with Father John.
Thank you. Hi, Father. I was wondering, what is the reason that some churches have the tabernacle just behind the altar? Some of them have it on the side. Some of them have it in the chapel, and some of them don't even have it at all seen but you have to get out of the building, find the chapel, and there's the tabernacle.
Yes, I would say the current regulation that's in the General Structure of Roman Missal that came out with the third typical edition that was issued under Pope John Paul and then reaffirmed with Pope Benedict XVI is that the tabernacle should be centrally located. And in most cases, that means right smack in the middle of the sanctuary, right behind the altar. The problem was that at the Second Vatican Council, it wasn't the Council Fathers, but they made this provision in places where you got a lot of high traffic of tourists. Like when you go to St. Patty's in New York, there's people wandering around constantly, even during Mass. And so in places where there was a high traffic, the idea was have a chapel where it's accessible so people can make private devotion without being disturbed. But in most cases, I would say 99.9% of the cases, your typical parish doesn't have tourists. You don't have buses of people coming to St. Gunigunda's or St. Cuthbert's Church, so it's not an issue. The documents say now there was something called Environment and Art that came from from the Americans. It wasn't even a document from the Bishops' Conference. It was a committee statement that was advocating having the tabernacle in other places, in corners, or even separate chapels. That never had any weight to it, and certainly with the new revised Roman Missal, it makes it clear it should be centrally located and with due reverence. And as that's defined, and if you see, as you've seen it played out, it means where people can find it. You don't want to be like Mary Magdalene and go into a Catholic church and say, "Where have they put my Lord?"
Does that help, Gabby?
Yes, very much so. Thank you very much, because it's very sad going to a church where there is no tabernacle.
Yes, I would say keep asking. Ask the pastor, please. Put Jesus where he belongs.
Yeah, we were in a parish just this past week where we had been in that parish in 2019, and the tabernacle was in a side chapel, and now it is in the smack dab in the center, right behind the main altar, and they have actually done the same thing at the cathedral parish.
Wow.
In this, yeah. So it's really some areas where some things are moving definitely in the right direction. Well, Father, we are just about out of time. The hour has flown by. If you would be so gracious, would you leave us with a blessing?
Absolutely. Benedicat vos omnipotens Deus Pater et Filius et Spiritus Sanctus. Amen.
Amen. On behalf of our host, Father John Trigilio, our producer, Michael McCall, our call screener, Matt Gubensky, and our social media maven, Mr. Jeff Burson. I'm Jack Williams. Thanks so much for tuning in to EWTN's Open Line Monday. We're just getting the week started. Tomorrow on Tuesday, Father Wade Menezes will be in the house. We'll talk faith, family, and fellowship. On Wednesday, we'll welcome Father Mitch in. Father Mitch Pacwa will talk church teaching, ancient languages, sacred scripture, and the like. Father Brian Milady will be here on Thursday. And on Friday, our very own Vice President of Theology, Mr. Colin Donovan, to wrap up the week. Thanks for helping us get started. Back at it tomorrow. Until then, God bless.
The most original Catholic content is on EWTN Radio.
Next time on EWTN.